All right, let's get right into it. We're going to take a journey back to 19th century India to explore a really powerful story. It's about how the entire world of the country's tribal communities was just completely upended. And right at the center of it all is one man's vision of a golden age to try and set things right.
So, this is the big question, right? Just imagine for a second. Your whole life, your food, your home, your culture, it's all tied to the forest. It's everything. What happens when, all of a sudden, that's taken from you? Okay, so before we jump into the conflict, it's so important to understand the world that was being lost. For hundreds, maybe thousands of years, tribal groups all across India had created these really diverse, self-sufficient societies. And the forest was the absolute heart of everything.
And here's what's so fascinating. There was no single tribal way of life. It was this incredible mosaic of different cultures. You had Jhum cultivators who had moved from one plot of land to another. You had hunters and gatherers like the Khons and Orissa who would share the meat from their hunts. Then there were herders, moving with their animals following the seasons. And yes, some groups had even settled down to farm in one spot.
Let's zoom in on Jhum cultivation for a second because it was super common. It's actually a pretty brilliant system. You clear a small patch of forest, burn the leftovers to make the soil fertile, plant your crops, and then, and this is the most important part, you move on. You let that patch of forest grow back. The whole thing only works if you have the freedom to move and access to a lot of land.
This is such a great way to see how it all worked. This is the calendar of the Baiga people. And you can see right away, their lives weren't run by a clock. They were run by the seasons, by the rhythm of the forest. There was a time for hunting, a time for sowing, a time for harvesting. Life was completely woven into the natural world.
And then that rhythm was broken. With the arrival of British colonial rule and the traders and moneylenders who followed, that world we just saw began to be taken apart, piece by piece.
Now, to really get what happened next, you have to know this word, Dikus. This is what the tribal communities called the outsiders. And listen, it was not a friendly term. They came to mean the moneylenders, the traders, the British, basically anyone they saw as the source of all their suffering.
And this was the single move that changed everything. The British passed new laws declaring that the forests, the very foundation of tribal life, their economy, their identity, were now the property of the state. Just like that, people who had lived in these forests for generations were turned into trespassers in their own homes.
This chart just lays it all out so starkly, doesn't it? On one side, you have the traditional way. Forests are a shared resource. You're free to move and cultivate. Hunting is a right. And then, boom, the British laws. Forests are state property. That Jhum cultivation is now illegal and hunting is restricted. Their entire way of living was suddenly a crime.
And you can just feel the sense of being trapped in this Baiga song from the 1930s. It's this cry of despair about being surrounded and squeezed from every direction. The landlord, the official, the tax collector. No matter where they looked, some new authority was controlling their life.
So on top of losing their forests, a whole new economic reality set in. Trade wasn't new, but the way it worked now, it became a trap. It led to this crushing cycle of debt and total dependence on the very Dikus they hated.
To really get how this worked, let's look at a perfect example, the story of the Santhal people in Hazaribagh. They were silk growers, and what happened to them shows you everything you need to know about this new exploitative economy.
Okay, so here's how it went down. Traders would send agents into the villages, give loans to the Santals to get started, and then come back to collect the silk cocoons. For all the hard work of raising 1,000 of these cocoons, the growers got paid just 3 to 4 rupees. Keep that number in your head.
And this is where it gets just wild. You see it right here. Those same cocoons were then taken to markets and sold for 5 times that price. The middlemen, the traders, they were making a fortune. And the people actually doing the work, the silk growers, they were earning next to nothing, trapped in debt. You can see why they saw traders as the enemy.
So let's just recap for a second. Your land is gone, your way of life is illegal, and your work is being exploited. What happens? What do you do when you're pushed to the absolute edge like that?
Well, you dream of a better world, and for the Munda people, that dream found a powerful voice in a man named Birsa Munda. His movement wasn't just about fighting back against the present. It was about creating a positive vision for the future, a return to a golden age.
So who was this guy, Birsa Munda? Well, he was born in the 1870s, and he grew up hearing all these stories about the good old days, before the Dikus came and ruined everything. He was exposed to all sorts of ideas. He went to a missionary school where he heard about a kingdom of heaven, but he also spent time with a Hindu preacher.
And he took all these different ideas and blended them into something new, something for his own people.
And what's really brilliant about his movement is that it had two parts. On one side, he was telling his people, hey, we need to reform ourselves from the inside. Give up drinking, clean up the villages, stop believing in witchcraft. But on the other side, he was calling for all-out resistance to the outsiders. He said they needed to destroy Ravana, meaning the Dikus and the Europeans, and set up their own kingdom, a Birsa Raj. And this vision, this Satyug, or Golden Age, it was the core of his message. It was a promise of a time of truth, where they would be free from all oppression. The Mundas would rule themselves, work their own land, and the Dikus would be gone. It was this incredibly powerful, hopeful idea of getting back to a perfect ancestral past.
And the movement just exploded. People flocked to him. The British got so worried that they arrested him in 1895. But when he got out of jail 2 years later, he was more determined than ever. His followers started attacking the symbols of their oppressors: police stations, churches, moneylenders' property. They even raised a white flag to symbolize the coming Birsa Raj. But in 1900, he was captured again and tragically died of cholera in jail, which brought the movement to a sudden halt.
Even though the movement itself ended with Birsa's death, the vision, that never really died. And it kind of leaves us with this final thought, doesn't it? The story of Birsa Munda is from a specific time and a specific place. But that dream of a golden age, that deep human need for justice, for dignity, for the right to shape your own destiny, that's a story that is absolutely universal, and it still speaks to us today.